This is Alice in Muggleland, with your hosts, Ilias McDaniels of the No-Maj Liaison Office, and Alice, the Muggle that got lost following the White Rabbit.
Lumos! Hello, fans and friends, wizards, witches, and no-mages and squibs. It is time to once again study the historical documents of the rise and fall of Lord Voldemort, otherwise known as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I am Bilius McDaniels, No-Maj Liaison Officer, and of course with me is the lovely No-Maj Alice.
Hi everyone, it's good to be back.
So, after our recording last week, you had spoken to me because there was a part in the last chapter, The Keeper of the Keys, that you wanted to go over that you had missed.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to go back to this because it bothered me, and I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity. So what I wanted to talk about with the last chapter, which is The Keeper of the Keys, as you said, is the fact that Dudley is an incredibly unlikable character. I feel like I'm on solid ground saying that. I don't think many people are going to argue with that. However, the fact that he's fat is one of the most likable things about him. Because there's not very much about him that's likable, but, the fact that he's fat is sort of neither here nor there. And yet there's this whole riff of fat shaming inside that chapter. The climax of that is, of course, Hagrid attempting to turn him into a pig and only adding a tail because he's already mostly pig. I just had to say that really kind of got under my skin because I feel like while there's a lot of things about him that should and could be criticized, the fact that he's fat is probably not one of them. It's possible that the author meant this as a reflection of his greedy personality and decided to be a bit lazy with that by making the greedy kid also a fat kid. It's not original to do that, of course. If you look at, say, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you have Gloomp, who is the kid who gets sucked up into the chocolate pipe pretty famously. Well, his sin, the reason he gets killed off in that book, is the fact that he is, greedy and he wants to eat everything. It's not as if this is, just particularly unique to this book, but it does bother me a little bit that while criticizing him, he's not being criticized for being stupid, or maybe I should say intellectually lazy. He's not being criticized for being greedy. He's being criticized for being fat and being made fun of by Hagrid, who is not a small person himself. As we see in this current chapter, he stands out because of his size in the rest of the world. You would think that somebody like Hagrid would have a little bit of sympathy for a kid who is too fat. Because again, this is a physical feature that makes him stand out in the world. He doesn't seem to have any sympathy for that at all. I don't think that the fat shaming thing was very funny or cool, and not very original either. Well, I was accusing Dudley of being intellectually lazy. I think that to make a greedy character fat is also kind of intellectually lazy on the part of the author.
Well, I understand the point you're trying to make in this regard. However, Hagrid doesn't know anything about Dudley other than he is the result of two people that are hiding Harry from his destiny. Now, that's Hagrid. Now, imagine if instead of Hagrid being in this position, it would have been McGonagall. McGonagall wouldn't give two blanks about his size in that regard, but she would just know that the Dursleys are horrible people. As you will find out, you'll find out is Hagrid.
Right, but this isn't just about Hagrid, right? Because Hagrid's, doing this very openly, but in almost every time Dudley gets mentioned in the previous chapters, there's this mention about his weight, right? So the fat shaming aspect of this, Hagrid is giving it a very open voice in the book, but it's there in the writing from the very beginning. And I don't think that that's a particularly interesting or funny thing, but it's definitely being played for laughs. I just find that to be, you have this despicable character who's greedy. You have a lot of things you could say about him, but the fact that he's being in the writing, this fat thing is being added as sort of a character failing when he gets mentioned. And then you have Hagrid openly mocking him about his weight and even going so far as to give him a pigtail. Yeah, I mean, this is ingrained
Alice,
in the book.
Let me ask a question. How many large, lazy, muscle-bound 10-year-olds do you know?
I'm sorry,
How
can you
many
repeat
large, lazy, muscle-bound 10-year-olds do you know?
I do not associate with 10-year-olds.
I think the reason for the constant pointing of Dudley's weight is because the writer wants to show a size differential between Dudley and Harry. And
Well, it could be that. And you could say that he's large. But I think that repeatedly referring to him as fat and having that be kind of the punchline is not really, I don't appreciate it.
let's move on to the 5th chapter, Diagon Alley.
Yeah, you know how most people would actually say that is just diagonally, right?
It's Diagon
pun, right?
Alley. Just like there is a Nocturne
'cause-
Alley. There is Diagon Alley. It's a famous place.
Which would also be said nocturnally. Yeah, they're puns. They're both puns. Diagonally.
What is this pun you're speaking
nocturnally,
of?
right. Yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, it's a great name for an alley. If I had an alley, I would definitely name it Diagon. So let's get into Diagon Alley, even though nobody would say it that way.
Hey now, many wizards know the proper pronunciation of Diagon Alley. If I understand that this might be beyond your no-match mind, but yes, there is a Diagon Alley.
Oh, really? Really? You're going to go there? Is that because I said this book had fat shaming in it? It does have fat shaming in it. I'm sorry. It just does. And Diagon Alley. Now I can't even say it wrong. Diagonally. That's the way most people would say it. Diagon Alley is not a thing. Diagonally is a thing.
Diagon Alley is a thing.
It's a pun. I don't have a problem with puns. Puns are the highest form of humor.
But it's a real thing. Anyway, Diagon Alley.
All right, so first things first. Dudley, his parents, the Dursleys, where did they go? Like, they're in the hut on the rock, and then suddenly they're just not there anymore, apparently, because Harry wakes up and he talks to Hagrid, and, you know, they have this whole thing with the owl and the newspaper, and you would think that at some point in there you would hear the Dursleys wake up. But we know they didn't sneak off in the middle of the night because the boat is still there. And so then Hagrid and Harry leave them on the rock without a boat. So I don't know if they're going to show up later and they're going to be all angry and wet because they had to swim back to the shore. But I would like to know where the Dursleys went. The process of Hagrid and Harry getting up and leaving to go to Diagonally.
Alley, yes. Diagon Alley, yes.
Diagonally, yes. That's where they went.
If you
So they
notice,
went there.
a major part of this chapter, though, in regards to what you were talking about with the previous chapter, has been brought up. He told Harry to have a piece of cake.
Oh, right. Yeah. I did see that. Actually, he didn't tell Harry to have a piece of cake. He said that he would like a piece of his birthday cake. The birthday cake thing, really, I have never once been given cake and not eaten it almost immediately, which may be why I'm a little sensitive about the fat shaming thing, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so the birthday cake, still haven't eaten it, because there's still no report of it being eaten in this case. So, but Hagrid wanted a piece. Hagrid, man after my own heart. Also, there was more sausage consumed because it's also good cold, which is true.
Harry is very much a sausage man.
Kid-friendly show, kids. Family-friendly, that's what you said. All right, so they get in the boat, and Hagrid, once again, you know, I do like Hagrid because he's also lazy. I feel like I have a lot in common with him. He likes birthday cake and he's lazy. So he doesn't actually want to row this boat to shore, and he uses a little bit more magic to speed it along. And then later, I love this line. He's like, well, the muggles can't know that we exist because they would want to use magic to solve all their problems, which is exactly what he does. So, yeah. I guess it's okay if you're not a muggle to use magic to solve all your problems. But apparently that's why the Ministry of Magic exists, is to keep us muggles from knowing that you guys exist. So that's good, because bureaucracy means you have a job.
Bureaucracy does mean that I have a job, and at the same time, sometimes bureaucracy means many people can have jobs. However, I understand the point with the muggles and hiding magic from muggles part. If we all could just get along, we wouldn't have to worry about that. What did you take from Hagrid's trip going through London with Harry?
So, yeah, clearly Hagrid really isn't made for this world. He doesn't fit in, like, physically. He's very big, he's very loud. As they're traveling through London, trying to get to Diagon Alley. God, that's going to make me roll my eyes every time I say it. He sticks out like a sore thumb. So I also thought it was interesting that he doesn't understand Muggle money, as he put it. So Harry has to buy the train ticket. I can relate to that. I've done quite a bit of traveling, and sometimes it feels like the money there isn't like when it's a different color and you don't really understand the exchange rate, and it just feels a little like mad money. It feels like monopoly money. Yeah.
And
I have a little bit of sympathy there for that
especially
feeling.
when in regards to British pounds, a lot of it is paper. And they went through and described money in regards to when the owl stopped by, you had bronze knuts, silver sickles, golden galleons. I mean, in the United States, we have sprinks and dragons too. So yeah, everything is different in regards to that.
Well, I did notice, that your money is precious metal. So does that mean that your currency is basically on a gold standard? Is that true?
Kind of, but not really. The goblins do have this mythical way of this thing that they use called, I think it's called math, that converts Muggle money into our money and vice versa if necessary.
Right, but your currency is actually backed by the fact that it in of itself has value. It's not the illusion that Muggles have where their money is only worth something because the government says so.
Pretty much in that regard, I would say, because you have people that want to get, you have other wizards that want to get as much gold as possible, or at least other types of precious metals, not because of just gold being worth something, but the magical properties of said metal. Because Gromp's law of transfiguration makes it so that you cannot go through and just magically create metal.
So alchemy doesn't exist?
We're going to get to that later in this book.
Okay. Moving on.
It's called the Philosopher's Stone.
It's might be almost the title, except here we call it the Sorcerer's Stone. He goes to the bank with the goblins. They take this fantastic roller coaster ride down to the vaults. That was something. I do want to say that prior to that, he gets identified by Hagrid, and at this point, it's a little bit like Hagrid is kind of fanboying out. He's like, "Look who I'm hanging out with, guys! It's Harry Potter!" And everybody's all excited to meet him and wants to shake his hand. And so Harry Potter has gone from living in a cupboard under the stairs to he is a celebrity who is magical and he's rich. So this is a lot of wish fulfillment in the last 2 chapters. So that's a thing. So they go to the bank with the goblins, and I have to agree with Hagrid's assessment. You would have to be completely crazy to try to rob this bank because for so many reasons. But apparently, things like the doors can suck you inside of rooms and leave you locked there until the goblins decide if they want to let you out. When and if, because they might not. Harry gets his money, and then they go shopping. So that's exciting. Who doesn't love to go shopping?
And they go through, and Harry meets the first wizard student that he would ever meet in the robe shop.
Right, but they don't even exchange names. So this wizard student doesn't know that he's talking to somebody famous. And he doesn't particularly like this guy, because this guy is kind of snobby, and he looks down on muggles, and he looks down on Hagrid, and I have a feeling we're going to find out in the future that this guy is, sort of a nemesis for Harry, but we'll see.
Well,
that's my prediction.
I guess we will see that, shall we?
The shopping trip is fun, right? Gets to get like all kinds of cool things. Like I love the idea of ink that changes colors while you're writing with it. I love the idea of a pet owl. How cool is that? Though, again, the cat hatred thing. All right, so I feel like maybe I'm just in a bad mood today, but after ranting about fat shaming, I want to mention the fact that nobody in this book seems to like cats. And cats are wonderful, noble creatures. So,
well, in case of Hagrid, he says he doesn't like cats because they make him sneeze. I think if they didn't make him sneeze, he'd be okay with them.
I'm just going to say, because first we had Harry complaining about being shown pictures of his neighbor's cats. Then the cat trips the neighbor and she breaks her leg, so now she doesn't like cats as much. And then we've got Hagrid saying, well, toads are out and we're not getting you a freaking cat. So it's anti-cat. I mean, if you had a fat cat, this book would be all over that cat. Just,
You're going to love book 3.
Anyway, so He doesn't get a cat, he gets an owl, which I have to admit is pretty cool. I'm just saying that a cat would have also been pretty cool. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, I just want to be on the record that I have no problem with cats. I like cats, and quite frankly, I don't understand the British infatuation with owls when paper rats are just more convenient.
Okay. Owls are cool. They're very pretty. And they fly. Do your paper rats fly?
They can, if you put them on a paper airplane.
So, anyway. So he gets an owl. He gets a wand. Isn't the wand thing interesting? How the wand chooses the wizard and not the other way around. And they all have these sort of magical creature properties. So he's trying these wands, and it's kind of like, I don't know, trying to get a car to start or something. You know, he waves the wand around, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. And then finally, something happens. And lo and behold, this is sort of like the sister or brother wand. I'm not sure if wands have genders, but, you know, this wand is closely related to the wand of He Who Shall Not Be Named. Ooh, spooky. That's interesting. Definitely cool shopping trip for somebody who doesn't actually do much shopping in his life, probably has never been on a shopping trip at all, much less one like this. Harry seems to take to it like a duck to water. I mean, he loves to shop.
And you notice he didn't make any decisions in this chapter either.
I did notice that. So he is continuing, like, you know, he is still along for the ride, but now he's famous and rich. So life is pretty good for Harry. He just hasn't had anything to do with any of that. Harry is going to take this whole being an independent human, or should I say wizard thing very slowly. He's getting introduced to it bit by bit. He didn't even get to pick out what kind of ice cream he got to eat, though chocolate and raspberry sounds delicious. So,
in regards to this chapter, is there anything else that you went through that you might want to point out that you thought was important?
So far, there's this story in his life, of course, of who killed his parents. But for the time period that most of the book takes place in, so the exception of the very first chapter, the scariest thing in this universe is the Dursleys, right? You know, they have been his real, you know, the bane of his existence. In this chapter, you know, we meet the professor at the Leaky Cauldron and Professor Quirrell. I guess that's like squirrel without an S, so Professor Quirrell. And it comes out that this sort of stammer that Professor Quirrell speaks with, and the fact that he physically trembles, is not a result of some sort of, he wasn't born that way. This is the result of the things that he has seen. And he is the teacher who is going to teach Harry how to combat the dark arts. And he has clearly seen some stuff. It's, you know, it's pretty clear from what Hagrid says that this is a man who is suffering from some kind of PTSD. So this is really the first point at which, even with a little bit of talk about dragons from Hagrid and a few ominous ideas hanging in the air about the fact that, you know, again, there was this He Who Shall Not Be Named that we don't know what actually happened to him. Some people think he's dead, but most people seem to think he's just gone into some sort of hiding. This is really the first victim of something dark and terrible that we're meeting, who's been, you know, permanently altered by what they've seen. So this is the first clue that we're really getting, that there are things in this universe that are darker and scarier than the Dursleys. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, we will be getting to dark and scary things in the next chapter. In this case, if you want to consider it dark and scary, because Harry is going to actually have to take initiative for his own life.
That is scary. You know, I wish him the best of luck in the next chapter.
Who is currently your favorite character of the book?
Despite the whole fat shaming thing, I'm still going with Hagrid. Man after my own heart, likes cake, likes ice cream, kind of lazy. So, Hagrid, definitely. I also want to make a note here of how proud he is that Dumbledore trusts him. He mentions it twice in this chapter, that Dumbledore sends him to do important things and that he trusts him. So we're getting to hear more about the sort of esteem that Dumbledore is held in by the wizarding world, even though we don't really know much about Dumbledore himself. We know he wrote this letter and that he's the one responsible for Harry coming to live with the Dursleys. But Hagrid talks about how he is trusted by Dumbledore, how important that is. Hagrid also talks about how the Ministry of Magic wanted Dumbledore to be the main minister, but he turned it down. A little bit more about Dumbledore in this chapter and how people feel about him.
All right, folks. So that's all that we're going to have for today.
Before we finish up for the whole day, I just want to say thanks for listening. It's really been a fun project so far, and I can't wait to keep going with it. If you're enjoying this podcast, and if you aren't, I'm not sure why you're still listening. Are you some kind of masochist? I'd really appreciate it if you would go on to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen and leave us a review. And even more so, if you just tell your friends about us and, share us around. Would love to get some more listeners out there and would love to hear from you. So feel free to drop us a line. Thanks.
Yep, you want to drop us a line, you could drop it off. You can either drop it off on Twitter at @AinMuggleland. You can also email us directly at AliceInMugglelandPodcast@gmail.com. And we also are on Facebook at Alice in Muggleland. Just put the Facebook search engine and we pop up right there. We go through and make notes and share funny things and talk about things that are related to the podcast and not. So, until next week, folks, Nox.
Bye.
This is a family-friendly podcast. In theory. All right.
Oh,
Let's get all the cursing out, all right?